Now to the crisis in Afghanistan and a desperate situation unfolding in Kabul. Earlier today, we saw Afghans clinging to planes on the tarmac, doing anything they can to escape Taliban rule. Just last month, President Biden said the Taliban would not overrun the country and promised there would be no emergency evacuation like we saw in Vietnam. But this afternoon, he defended his decision to pull U.S. troops out of the country.
Our mission in Afghanistan was never supposed to have been nation building. It was never supposed to be creating a unified, centralized democracy. Our only vital national interest in Afghanistan remains today what it has always been: preventing a terrorist attack on America's homeland.
The conditions on the ground have been deteriorating by the hour, and with that in mind, Jason Wheeler brings us up to speed.
Today, dramatic images coming from Kabul. This video of Afghans swarming U.S. military planes leaving the airport. Long lines of people trying to get out of the country as helicopters could be seen here flying away, with the enormous throng of people nearby able to be seen from satellite images. ABC's Ian Pinnell on the ground in Kabul.
This crowd rushing to the airport, behind them the sound of gunfire.
The United Nations holding an emergency session about the situation in Afghanistan, and President Biden coming back from Camp David to address the nation.
The truth is, this did unfold more quickly than we had anticipated. So what's happened? Afghanistan political leaders gave up and fled the country. The Afghan military collapsed, sometime without trying to fight.
UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres telling the Council all countries must be open to accepting Afghan refugees.
We cannot and must not abandon the people of Afghanistan.
Those scenes just intensifying throughout the day. Pentagon spokesman John Kirby confirming approximately 2,500 U.S. troops are at the airport assisting with what have been chaotic evacuation efforts. That number of troops expected to grow to 6,000 in coming days. And reports that U.S. troops were involved in skirmishes with armed individuals at the airport, killing two.
While our mission is not offensive, our forces have the inherent right of self-defense.
American troops cannot and should not be fighting in a war and dying in a war that Afghan forces are not willing to fight for themselves.
This has all been in the making for 2 decades, so let's talk through how we got here. Al-Qaeda had been targeting Americans for years, but in 2001, the U.S. identified Al-Qaeda and its leader, Osama bin Laden, as responsible for the 9/11 attacks. Bin Laden was in Afghanistan under the protection of the Taliban. After the Taliban refused to hand him over, the U.S. launched Operation Enduring Freedom on October 7th, and coalition airstrikes began. In December of that year, 2001, the Taliban regime collapsed, but over 2 decades under Presidents Bush, Obama, and Trump, the Taliban worked to make gains again. We saw U.S. troop surges and complex military strategizing to try to keep the threat that they posed at bay. Then in February of 2020, under President Trump, the Taliban and the U.S. signed a deal to withdraw U.S. troops. In April of this year, President Biden announced the U.S. would withdraw by September 11th. The Taliban then launched a huge offensive in May, but over the last 10 days, they captured dozens of regional capitals, and yesterday they took Kabul. And I think that that's what took a lot of people by surprise, the speed with which they moved not just through the country. They thought that there would at least be some last stand there around the capital city, Chris and Izzy, and it just fell like the rest of them.